I don't even have a cute way to start this one. In 2010, I was hired by the music department at First Church to take a Christmas show called And the Angels Sing to First Church. I actually did something really unique where I just went in as a director. I cast First Church members. At the time, I was not living in Huntsville, and it was just a really fun experience for me. While I was there, and I think the week of the show, I was decorating the church, and I was actually nail gunning decorations into the wall sets and stuff like that. And I heard this voice behind me say, Sister Jones. And I turned around, and it was at the time the fairly newer pastor of the church, Pastor W. Snell. He calls me to his office, and he had been watching the rehearsals of the show, and he was just like, I'm really interested in you bringing a play to our church next year. And I was like, sure, no problem. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, what can I bring, and what shows that I've already have written that would be ready? He was like, no, you misunderstand. I want you to write a show for next year for a family summit that First Church is doing. He said, I need it to be about families. He said, I want it to talk about divorce, talk about newlyweds, talk about people that are expecting. I mean, he just goes down the line of literally every kind of family trope that you can think of that he was going to be covering. And Productions by Danita Jones was going to open up this week. I said yes. And ultimately from that conversation, the original script of The Business of Being Family was born. I go home from that meeting and I start writing. I actually started casting the show as I was writing it out. I had written out all the characters that I wanted included in it first. And then I just started calling friends and family and was like begging them to be in the show. We decided that I didn't just want just kind of like a local cast. I was in Columbus, Ohio at the time. So I started calling people that I knew, like from Texas and from Washington, D.C. and Tennessee, a cast member in Alabama, just everywhere, and pulling this cast together. And we decided that we were going to convene in Columbus, Ohio for the major read-through Memorial Day weekend. So everybody is excited. This is a script went out in January. Everybody's getting familiar with it, the whole 9 yards. Right around February, I start to not feel like myself. Ended up taking a pregnancy test and find out that I am pregnant. This feels like a different pregnancy. Like up at this point, we had already had 2 children, my husband and I, and I knew what pregnancy felt like with, these, having been pregnant before, but something about this pregnancy just seemed kind of weird. And so finally, when I went to the doctor, just to kind of, get a good checkup and to let them know, hey, this doesn't feel right. And they do an ultrasound and find out that I am not carrying 1 baby, I am carrying 2 babies. So I'm pregnant with twins. Immediately in the doctor's office, I start doing the math. I'm going to be 7 months by the time The Business of Being Family has to debut. I think we can make it. But at this point, my husband and I really aren't telling anybody other than, our family. I happen to get so ill that I kind of have to take some time off. This is way before the actual read-through with the cast. So I go down to Huntsville to take my 2 kids down there, kind of take a break, stay with my mom and dad. And I happen to go to church at First Church, and of course Pastor Snell sees me. He comes up to me and he's just like, hey, because by that time I was really showing because it's twins, and he was like, are we still good for September? I was like, we're gonna be fine, everything is fine, we're gonna be good, don't worry about it, the babies aren't due until November, we're fine. Memorial Day comes. I had not told the cast, other than my stage manager Babette Robinson, that I was pregnant with twins. So of course when everybody comes in for the read-through, their mouths drop open, and I tell the cast, don't worry, everything's gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. The babies aren't due until November. We're gonna get this play. I'm gonna go down with you guys in September to do this show. And then when the show is over, come back to Columbus, wait till the babies are born, everything will be cool. And we start rehearsing for the show. For this particular rendition of The Business of Being Family, I actually wrote a finale song for the cast to sing right before the bows called Bless This Family. I do not consider myself a songwriter, but it was the song that was in my head that I thought was going to bring everything together. I taught it to 3 cast members, recorded it, and then sent it out to the whole cast. And I was just like, learn this. Don't worry about it if you're not really familiar with it. We'll finally get together and sing it together, so I'll teach it to you later. Remember that. So we keep rehearsing. Every once in a while, I tell my stage manager, hey, let's run this just in case something happens. I keep saying that. Just in case something happens, let's run this show. Just, from your perspective, if you have to run this by yourself, just in case something happens. And, everybody kind of laughs it off, but I just, keep saying that. We get to September, we get to the weekend of the show, everybody's excited. I had already had several family members express their concern about me traveling with twins. By this time, I was 7 months pregnant. I was massive in size, and everybody was just like, we're not really comfortable with you traveling. But in my head, I'm just like, this is one of the biggest shows of my career. I cannot miss this. Everything will be fine. My sister, who Dr. Gina, she's an OBGYN, she calls me from Memphis, where she was staying at the time, or where she was living. And she was just like, look, I'm bringing all of my stuff with me. I'm bringing all my equipment with me that I have. We're going to make sure that you're okay. I'm going to monitor you during the entire show. If anything pops off, we'll just be ready for you to go. I don't think it's a good idea for you to come. I'm just like, nope, it'll be fine. Everybody stop worrying. It's going to be fine. My husband and I decide that we're going to travel down the Thursday before the show. No, the Wednesday before the show. We take, it's a 8-hour drive. We take our very sweet time. We're very careful driving down to Huntsville. Get there. I'm not on my feet a lot. Have people running errands for me, the whole 9 yards. Get to that Thursday. I'm still very much relaxed. And my stage manager is handling everything in Columbus. People were flying into Columbus to leave together so they can drive down. The cast is supposed to leave at midnight Friday morning, and I was just kind of staying awake in my parents' house, kind of sitting on the couch, making sure that everything is copacetic, and I happen to fall asleep. I wake up at the right time, call my stage manager. I'm like, are you guys on the road? They're like, yes, we're on the road. I go back to sleep. I wake up about midnight. I decide, let me just go ahead and get up and, maybe grab something to eat, and I get up and I walk about 3 or 4 steps, and my water breaks at my parents' house in the living room. We were blessed because they immediately get my sister on the phone. My parents get one of their really amazing friends who is also a high-risk OBGYN. And the next thing I know, I am water broken in my father's car, flying down the road to the hospital. And I call the stage manager, I call Babette, and I'm just like, look, you remember that scenario that we had where, I said what may happen? It's actually happening. So she kind of hid that from the cast. I was like, don't tell anybody, just let everybody come, have breakfast. You guys run the show like you need to, and then we'll figure everything else later. The twins were delivered at 5:30 in the morning, the Friday before the show. Of course, the church has to be set up. The cast is trying to get themselves together. And then somebody remembers that nobody has actually learned this song that they were supposed to learn. So my mother, who was a pianist, who was alive at the time, she knew it because I had sent it to her. So she was kind of teaching it. The cast was kind of learning it. They had 2 shows back to back to do, a 6:30 show and an 8 o'clock show. I am in the hospital, and I can't be there. My twins were doing fine, but they were in the NICU. And at the time, because we're in kind of like, this is in 2011, streaming isn't a thing. So they are Skyping me into the performance. Like they had, Mike Diaz, who was my tech director at the time, had a computer that he literally had to turn around and face the stage. And that is how I was watching the performance. They get to the song at the end of the performance, and it tanks. Like nobody remembers the words. Nobody knows what's going on. It is an absolute disaster. I call one of my cast members from the hospital, and during one of the show breaks, and I was just like, somebody better learn that song. Like there's too much riding on this next performance. I need for you guys to learn this song. So I think they pulled into a room somewhere, and everybody kind of went over it again. And that is how the song Bless This Family got learned for the second performance. One of the most amazing things about that whole experience was the way the cast came together in the midst of what could have honestly been probably one of the most disastrous things that could happen, in the absence of the director. With a stage manager and a cast of 19 people, they were able to come together and perform one of my favorite shows. But of course, that's what made doing that show several years later so special to me, was because I was actually able to be in the audience when it was actually done and actually calling the show instead of having to call it from a hospital room. Usually at the end of these, I talk about the moral of the story. I think the moral is more so for me, just, try not to push yourself too much past the limit. Trust your actors, trust your performers. I think that's a great moral to end on. Here is the infamous song, Bless This Family, from the original 2011 production of The Business of Being Family. Bless our home. And that is the season finale of Gather for Notes. See you next time.